One of the things about the Brigade that made it different than a lot of these other groups is that it was composed of both black and white, men and women, gay and straight. The George Jackson Brigade emerged out of a study group, a book by the Weather Underground called Prairie Fire. A group of us talked about implementing the lessons set out in the book Prairie Fire. We thought things were so bad that we were willing to risk death and imprisonment in order to bring about progressive change. People sleeping in the streets, widespread poverty, just terrible. And yet there was no resistance at all, no thought of resistance from anybody.
With Color Time, $10 brings you one full week of comedy, romance, sports, and more. That's right. For a limited time, the first week's rental on any Color Time television is just $10. Regular rates apply after the first week. So call Color Time, America's largest TV rental system, now.
A group of us left the study group and formed something called the George Jackson Brigade. Is the name we gave it. And we gave it that name because in his book Blood in My Eye, George Jackson said, well, he said a lot of things.
You asking me to confess to something? As a
Unless you want to, did you kill a man?
Look, one of the most important elements of guerrilla warfare is to maintain secrecy. I've killed nobody until you know, it's been proven.
This is one of the safe houses we lived in during the early periods of the George Jackson Brigade. This was one of about 5 safe houses we had. We had this house, and we had a country house up north, out in the woods by Burlington. And the 2 houses were connected by citizen band radios. When you're underground, you're underground. You don't, you cannot do illegal activities and interface with the progressive community on any kind of social way. That's the recipe for disaster. You know, I mean, it's very intense. It's not fun. It's not romantic. It's difficult and it's dangerous. In this particular location, we didn't have any interaction with the neighbors. Get up, eat breakfast. Maybe have a house meeting about what our next target should be, our financial situation. We had a van that we would use and that we'd park out in front of a bank, and you know, 2 people would be in the van, but it would look empty, sitting there, and you know, they would spend the day watching the bank. Who comes, who goes, how often the police come by, listening to, you know. Then in the evening, relax, listen to music, maybe play a board game. Stalingrad was one of our favorite. I guess it was kind of like being in the military. There were long periods of boredom, interrupted with intense periods of, I don't know if excitement is the right word, but or drama or what, but you know, a lot of intensity. It was a bitter strike, long fought. Both sides, the city light workers on one side and city light management on the other, were dug in. And neither would give. The brigade decided that the best way that we could support the city light workers and to gain more influence among working class people was to bomb a substation, a power substation in the very rich Laurelhurst neighborhood of Seattle. Anyway, that bomb went off and destroyed the substation, and the poor rich people of Laurelhurst had to bring in the new year without power, in the dark. the action was denounced by the bourgeois media outlets, and they tried to get city light workers to join in and say, "Oh, what a despicable thing! How terrible of those evil terrorists to do this thing." But not a one of them would say a bad word about the brigade. And the strike was settled soon after that, and I can't say that our action had an impact on that. Whether it did or whether it didn't is immaterial. All that was needed to do an action was an alarm clock, some wire and some electrical tape, some solder, and 3 pieces of pipe and some pistol powder. The expensive part was weapons, radios, antennas, rent, those kinds of things. Sometimes my partner asks me, you know, "It's your birthday, how come you don't want to have a party?" And sometimes we do, a Mayday party or something. But the real thing is to celebrate victories. And we mourned defeat and we celebrated victories. After the city light bombing and Safeway bombings, we celebrated. We were just really happy, really together. An exhilarating moment. Just as the highs are really high and the lows are really low. But most of the time you're in between. But you're always kind of scared. The trick is to overcome that fear and to not let paranoia and fear rule you. Because if that happens, then the terrorists win.